It had been a routine mission until it wasn't. Dr. Maya Granger stepped through the rusted gate into the long-forgotten mine, a place buried under years of mystery and secrecy. The company that owned it had abandoned the site decades ago, deeming it a failed investment. But for Maya, the mine wasn't just a relic, it was the key to unlocking secrets buried deep within the earth, secrets that could rewrite history. Just another one of those forgotten places, huh? Sam, the lead engineer, said, his voice tinged with an uneasy laugh. He adjusted his heavy pack and wiped sweat from his forehead. Feels like something's watching us. Maya frowned, shining her flashlight along the walls of the entrance. The mine was cold, unnaturally cold. Condensation covered the stone walls, and the air had a peculiar metallic smell, as though something had been left to rot in the damp for far too long. The farther they descended, the colder it got, a chill that seemed to gnaw at the bones. The group of scientists, engineers, and archaeologists huddled together as the tunnel stretched into dark unknowns. The only sounds were their breathing, the faint scuff of boots on the stone, and the occasional rattle of a loose rock. Each flicker of their flashlight seemed to dance with shadows, and Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. The mine stretched on, its path winding and narrow. Every corner they turned felt wrong. The architecture was odd, not like anything Maya had seen before. The walls, built with crude masonry, were adorned with symbols, etched into the stone as if deliberately carved, as though the stone itself had been chosen to keep something in. "What do you think these mean?" Sam asked, his voice hesitant. The team gathered around the wall to inspect the strange symbols. They were abstract, almost animalistic in design, spirals interwoven with jagged lines. Maya studied them carefully, her mind racing. "It's not a language I've encountered," she said quietly, "but these aren't random. They're too deliberate." The group moved on, pressing deeper into the heart of the mine, but with each step, the unease in the air thickened. The air had a metallic tang to it, like old rust, but there was something more, something wrong. Then, after an hour of wandering through pitch-black tunnels, they found it. It wasn't a mining chamber as they'd expected. It wasn't even a typical mine shaft. What lay before them was an enormous chamber, its scale almost unfathomable. The cavern stretched into darkness above them, where broken rafters hung from the ceiling like skeletal remains, and in the center of the room was an unmistakable sight, a heavily reinforced steel door, still standing, though centuries old. That doesn't belong here," Maya whispered. The lab was nothing like the rest of the mine. Unlike the rough-hewn stone of the tunnels, it was built of smooth, polished metal gleaming under the lights. The door was sealed shut, and on the other side, something stirred. The moment they stepped into the room, the temperature seemed to plummet. The air was dense, thick with the stench of age and decay. Old machinery, long deactivated, lay dormant around the chamber. Rows of what appeared to be medical tables stood along the walls, covered in strange vials and glass containers. A dull hum lingered in the air, as if the machines were waiting, watching, breathing. Maya stepped cautiously forward, her flashlight illuminating the center of the room. A strange vat bubbled quietly, filled with an opaque black liquid that shifted like oil in water. It was as though something was moving beneath the surface, but whatever it was, it remained unseen. "Should we investigate further?" Sam asked, his voice shaking slightly as he approached the vat. His hand hovered over the surface, almost as if drawn by some unseen force. Maya hesitated. "Something feels wrong. We need to be careful." As the team cautiously explored the lab, it became clear that they had stumbled upon something far older than they had imagined. The equipment, though strange and advanced for its time, showed signs of wear, as though it had been abandoned long ago. Wires were twisted, machines lay broken, and thick dust covered everything. Yet in the center of it all, the vat bubbled quietly, its contents ever-changing, swirling like ink in water. "This doesn't make sense," Maya muttered, scanning the equipment with a mixture of awe and fear. Some of the machines appeared to be biological in nature, flesh-like material intertwined with mechanical parts. Some of the jars and vials contained substances that didn't match any known compound on Earth. One of the archaeologists, Helen, moved closer to a series of glass containment units. "Look at this," she said, her voice trembling. Inside the units were figures, but they were not just humans, at least not anymore. Their bodies had been twisted, altered beyond recognition. Some appeared to have mechanical limbs, while others were preserved in a state of grotesque stasis. They were like experiments, failed attempts at something. But what? They were testing something, some kind of hybridization, Maya said, her voice faltering. She felt the chill in her bones as she looked at the half-human figures, frozen in time, their eyes blank, their bodies scarred by both biology and technology. Suddenly, there was movement. At first, it was subtle, just a flicker of motion from one of the shadowy corners of the lab. Then, as if triggered by the team's presence, something in the vat stirred. The liquid inside began to churn violently. A sound echoed through the chamber. A growl, low and distorted. Maya's heart skipped a beat as she realized that the vat wasn't just a containment chamber, it was something far darker. The hum in the room intensified, and the lights flickered ominously. Sam moved closer to the vat, his curiosity overcoming his caution. "What is it?" he murmured, almost to himself. "What are they doing in here?" Before anyone could answer, the lights went out completely, plunging the room into complete darkness. A burst of electricity crackled in the distance, the shadows stretching across the walls like long skeletal fingers. And then they heard it, the unmistakable sound of something moving behind them. The air in the room grew thick with tension, and every member of the team froze, their breaths shallow and hurried. Something was watching them. Something had been awake. Maya could feel it, a presence in the shadows, something ancient and dangerous lurking in the dark corners of the lab. "We need to leave," Maya whispered urgently, gripping her flashlight tighter. Her instincts screamed that the vat and the bodies were not the only secrets hidden in this mine. The darkness around them seemed alive, oppressive. But before they could react, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was human, or had once been human, its body twisted and contorted in unnatural ways. The skin was a pale, sickly gray, and parts of it had been replaced with metal plates and tubes, as if mechanical limbs had been grafted onto a decaying frame. The creature's eyes glowed an eerie, otherworldly green. The team gasped in horror, and Maya stumbled backward. "What is that?" she managed to breathe. "It's one of them," Helen said, voice trembling. "One of the failed experiments." But it wasn't just one. From every corner of the lab, other figures began to emerge, slow, jerky movements, a grotesque mechanical shuffle. They weren't zombies in the traditional sense. These were something else. They were alive, but not alive. Their mechanical components hummed with a strange alien energy, and their eyes burned with that same unnatural glow. The growling grew louder. Then a shrill screech cut through the silence, and one of the creatures lunged at Sam. He didn't have time to react. Its metallic hand lashed out, grabbing him by the throat. His scream echoed through the chamber as the creature's grip tightened. The sound was a hideous mixture of mechanical whirring and gurgling gasps, as if the creature's mouth was fighting to speak. Maya's mind raced, but there was no time for analysis, no time for solutions. She drew her sidearm and fired, the bullet ricocheting off the creature's metal plating without making a dent. Panic surged within her, but the sheer force of the attack sent them into a frenzy. "Run!" Maya shouted. She didn't need to tell them twice. The mine had become a labyrinth of horrors, and with every passing moment, the creatures multiplied. Their inhuman screeches filled the air, echoing through the twisting tunnels. Maya's mind raced as she tried to find a way out. Her flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows against the jagged walls. There was no clear exit, no easy path forward. "We need to get to the surface," Helen shouted, her voice cracking. "Now!" But Maya knew they were running out of time. The creatures were closing in, their unnatural shrieks growing louder by the second. She could feel them in the walls, in the very earth beneath her feet. The mine was alive with them. Ahead, she spotted the remnants of the control room. The broken screens and twisted cables lay discarded in the corner. She sprinted toward it, heart pounding. If she could find a way to shut down the power, maybe, just maybe, they could escape. But the creatures were close. Too close. With shaking hands, Maya reached for the nearest terminal, ripping wires out and smashing at the keys. The system was old, but it still had power. The lights flickered once again, and then a low hum filled the air, followed by the unmistakable sound of a door sliding open. The exit. She had found it. But as she turned to flee, she saw something she couldn't unsee. A figure, tall and towering, stepped out of the shadows, its form a monstrous hybrid of flesh and machine. "I knew you would come," it whispered in a low, distorted voice. "Now it's too late." Maya froze, realizing that this was no accident. This lab had been waiting for them all along. And now there would be no ESG,